Hello, I'm Robert, a voluntary fact checker and helping if you're scared of many things. And my first video, I went through the first part of this. I'll just quickly summarize what I went through before. So I went through all these various things that why the US couldn't use missile strikes or paratroopers or something like that. It's not going to be like Venezuela, because all they need to do is to bring up Greenland and say, we'd like to send 10,000 soldiers there, and say, oh, delighted, when are you going to come? We'll roll out the red carpet for you. So that's essentially, it'd be ridiculous to use missile strikes to do something you could just do with a telephone call. And then, but they couldn't get control of Greenland that way because the population wouldn't accept them as being in charge of Greenland. So it'd have to be a military junta, an unelected military junta. And then the Greenlanders, they wouldn't fight back. That'd be ridiculous. They just do constant peaceful protests, just like the protesters in Georgia. And then the US law is very clear that this would not be legal, and it could never be a US state. And the soldiers and generals, they would refuse an illegal order to run such a junta. And then suppose, hypothetically, Trump was to, he found 1,000 MAGA soldiers who were willing to break the law, US law, and run a military junta in Greenland, as long as he promised to pardon them all. Then, so these soldiers, all they go marching over to Greenland, they take over they stand outside the Greenland parliament, they behave like ice agents. You have like ice agents in the streets who are dragging out the Inuit and terrorizing the Inuit or whatever. You could have whatever is going on in Greenland, and then then you'd have 1,000 criminal trials against these people in the United States courts. That would fill the news. And Trump then tells his soldiers, go on, keep on doing what you're doing. I'm going to pardon you all. And then all these cases go through the courts. They all get prison sentences. And then Trump says, I pardon you all. None of you need to go to prison. Well, what's going to happen next? Trump's going to be impeached. He's going to be convicted for sure. And then Trump himself will end up in prison. And don't worry about he is not immune. All the cases were underway when he managed to get out of jail by being elected. He's not going to get out of jail a second time because he can't be elected again. Indeed, if he was convicted, if he's impeached and then convicted, the conviction means that he can never stand for any government office again. And he certainly can't stand for Trump president again because you can only have 2 terms. So, and there's no real threat to Greenland from China or Russia. And so I'm going to go over this in a bit more detail in this one than I did last one, but I could all the rest of this. And Trump is going to be stopped one way or another. And so I went through the bit about the Don Bacon, Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska, and he's leaving he's retiring in 2026. So he is free to say things publicly that other representatives that he knows well in private, and they would be intimidated against saying things like this because of the Trump's leverage over them. But that leverage wouldn't be enough to protect him if he really did do something like this. So he is willing to speak up even now without it even coming to an impeachment at this stage yet. And he just is telling Trump that he would be impeached, and telling the world that Trump would be impeached if he was to do anything like this. He doesn't believe that that's what he wants to do, but that's. And I was joking that the way Trump's doing it just summary of one of the things he says, and my kind of joke about it is it's a bit like Trump marches up to a terrified greengrocer. He's got a mafia boss, and he's got these big powerful henchmen on either side. They've got guns, and they're saying, and they sort of, you must do what we say in the big threatening voice. And the greengrocer says, what is it you're going to do? What is it you want? Are you going to trash my store? What is it you want of me? And he says, I want to buy a pound of carrots at full price. And the Green go, what? And that's why you've got the guns out, just to go and do an ordinary purchase of a pound of carrots, or a kilogram of carrots, or whatever it is your unit is. And that's essentially what Trump is doing here, because the Greenlanders will give him everything, except, of course, they won't give him their sovereignty, but everything else he wants. Then they'd be delighted. So it's really a very silly thing that's going on here. So that's Don Bacon talking about that, and about sort of threaten Greenland, our ally, to achieve something that you could do in a friendly negotiation, a friendly handshake. It's really absurd. And the Greenlanders have been trying to talk to Trump to find to have a just normal conversation, a friendly conversation. What do you want? What do you need in Greenland? How can we help you? And he's refused. They refused all the meetings for 30 months of threats, until eventually they met just last week, I think it was, for the very first time. So it's all very absurd. And and he says the off-ramp is Trump realizing that Republicans aren't going to tolerate this. He's going to have to back off. And he hates being told no, but in this case, Republicans need to be firm with him. And then if he doesn't do that, then he'd be impeached. If he does actually go so far in some way. Yes. Oh, no, I've just got to refresh this page. Sorry, just a minute. Let me find the refresh icon. Here we go. There we go. And so 75% of Americans are opposed to Trump's plans. It seems a reasonably good guess that if they did a poll just of soldiers, that close to 100% of soldiers would be opposed, because they know it's illegal, and that if they were ordered to do that, they'd have to say no. So that's as far as I got in my previous video. I've just gone over it rather more quickly. This may be a slightly longer video, but I'm just going to go through the other sections here. So first of all, Trump, in his tweet that sort of started about these tariffs, he said that the NATO allies were in Greenland for unknown purposes. Well, actually, we know perfectly well. He actually said on the website of the Danish Department of Defense, and it explained they were preparing for NATO exercises similar to the ones they had last year. And these exercises to practice protecting Greenland from an invasion by Chinese or Russians, which is precisely what Trump was saying they're not doing enough of. So that's what they were there. They weren't there to defend Greenland from US. That would be absurd. You're never going to have Americans and British people, say, fighting the Americans. They'd refuse to do it. So there's no way there's going to be a battle between the British and the Americans. Both sides would refuse to get involved in that. So, and the 15 German soldiers, they were just there. They are kind of like scouts, just going out there and checking, and they check things like which airport will we used to fly in for the exercises, which dock would we sail into, would our ships sail into, and things like that. And that's all they were doing. And they checked those things. It only took them a few days, and then they went back home again. So Meloni of Italy, she says the tariffs may have been a mistake as a result of the US interpreting all this as exercise to protect against the US when they were to protect against the Russia or China, like the ones in 2025. The deployment to Greenland of a small number of troops. So, and Stalmer, the reporter asked him, is it true that he might have been misinformed about that? And Stalmer, he was a very typical politician. He says, this is one of the things I discussed with President Trump yesterday, and to these forces which were clearly there to assess and work on risk from the Russians. And so there's real clarity, I hope, about that. So Stalmer didn't directly answer the question, which was, did Trump have a misunderstanding? And was and Starmer able to clarify it? And then was it clarified? He didn't answer that. He didn't actually say any of that. That would be just, that would be kind of saying bad things about Trump, so he just doesn't say that. But he could have said, no, Trump was never misled, and he didn't say that either, which suggests that perhaps Trump was misled. And that may be a factor here. But then will Trump back down, having realised that he was misled about that? And the last I checked, that's not happened yet. But hopefully that'd be the easiest way out of it, is that Trump just backs down because he was misled and misunderstood. Latest I've checked, that's not in the news yet. It's possible this video will be out of date very quickly, and this will all be over. But assuming it doesn't, I'll just keep going. So we have this was first. I thought I'd give the perspective of the Greenlanders, who are Inuit, like the Inuit in Alaska, but they're far more freedom than the Alaskan Inuits. They have essentially the way Greenland is run is the way Inuits would run a nation. So, for instance, unlike the Inuit in Alaska or Americans generally, the Inuit in Greenland, they don't own land. None of the land is owned by anyone in Greenland. They just have an allotment to build their house on. So they own their house, but they don't own the land that it's built on. And the land is in common for everyone in Greenland, as is the sea. And they see it as that commonwealth that they all have. And so they have much less need they also have free healthcare. They pay their taxes and they get free healthcare, they get free education, and she said, these are my bullet point summaries. They even want to shoot their friends or invade their friends for greed. That's how the Americans seem to them, with their huge focus on finance. And the Greenlanders don't have this focus on finance. So even if Trump was to offer them $100,000 each, well, they say, so you want us to sell everything we've got here, what we've built up, an Inuit nation that's got a great deal of freedom. We may even become independent in the near future. And I've got everything sorted out the way we like it. And look at what you're doing in Minnesota to the Native American Indians, where they are rounding them up accidentally and claiming and detaining them illegally. And look at the way you've treated the Inuit in Alaska. Why would we want to become Americans? Especially historically in the past, but even, for instance, the way that Trump has renamed the biggest mountain in Alaska as Mount McKinley. So are they going to go around Greenland renaming all their landmarks with American names? I guess American generals or something. So they're not going to be keen at all. And even if you give us like $100,000 per person, we wouldn't give up free healthcare, free education, being part of Europe. And we do not want to be rich like the Americans are. So this is like the American dream, is all to do with wealth, isn't it? The way it's normally presented. That anyone, if they're industrious enough, they can have the opportunity to accumulate wealth. Well, the Greenlanders don't even think about it like that. That's not what they value. Because they have a completely different kind of a society where you look at things differently. So that's the Greenland society. They just don't think in terms of wealth. Of course, they have money. They buy things in shops and so on, but they don't have the priority of that. And so that's his saying, and that Trump is surrounding himself at least with the white power people. She knows very well that Trump himself doesn't identify as a white power person himself, but he surrounds himself with them, and so they know their rights would probably be taken away, and they're in a very good position as they are with Denmark, and they value this far more than $100,000 each. And they have a long history with Denmark as well, 400 years, and a lot of Greenlanders have a mother, father, grandmother, grandfather who's Danish. So, I haven't embedded the video. So I'll embed the video in a minute. So in the rest of it, she talks about how if the US did invade, they would just hunker down like they do for a storm. That should be hunker, So I'll find a little bit from the video and I'll put a clip into it. But she said something on the lines that we in Greenland, we often have storms, and we know that when there's a storm, you just have to hunker down in your homes and wait for it to blow over, and then you can go out again. And she said that's how they would handle Trump. So when I was saying they would just have these daily protests every day, if absurdly really, if Trump was to somehow find a way to establish military junta taking over Greenland, they'd just be protesting every day, and then just wait it out until the end of his term or whenever it was that it ended, because that's the Inuit approach to things like this. Is just hunker down like it is for a storm. So that's what you expect from Greenland. They're not going to fight back. They're just going to hunker down and protest and do everything they can until their time comes again. So they're quite patient, long people looking forward to the future, and they're not going to go fighting the United States. So now this is about how the China and Russia, and they have no military ships near Greenland, they have no capability to invade it, and the 200 well-equipped US defenders that are there already, they could easily hold off any attempt that China and Russia might make to invade Greenland. So there isn't really a security situation there at all that needs to be dealt with. And as for China, so China's foreign minister, Lars Rasmussen, he said that they haven't seen a Chinese warship for a decade or two anywhere near Greenland. And then the marine traffic data doesn't show any Chinese ships nearby. So all they send to the Arctic at all, and that's for China, all they send for the entire Arctic region, they send icebreakers, send research vessels and submarines. And if you go and look where the Chinese don't have bases all around the world like the United Kingdom does, or the United States does. The Chinese just have bases in China, and that's all. And one tiny base in Djibouti in the Gulf region. And their military vessels, they sail back and forth around China and patrol the seas around China, around their coasts. It's a coastal navy. It's not really meant for projecting power across oceans. Russia has a coastal navy too. It's what they call a green water. Is that the right word? Anyway, it's a coastal navy, and rather than a blue water navy, which is the navy that crosses oceans and can project power across oceans. And so China is aircraft carriers. It has got some modern aircraft carriers, but they haven't needed to make them nuclear powered. And this means that they need a huge amount of fuel to go anywhere. And these aircraft carriers just stay around China. And the furthest they've got is the southernmost parts of Indonesia, and that's as far as they've gone away from China. So you can't really project power across an ocean and invade an island without an aircraft carrier. But in a modern world, because you need to project air power. And so if we go and look at this here, the Russians are also, they're a very long way from Greenland. So this is the closest point in Russia. And several hundred kilometers from Svalbard is the area of Denmark that is closest to Russia. But even that is far too far away for Russia to even consider trying to invade Svalbard. Because Russia doesn't have aircraft carriers at all. So it couldn't even sail an aircraft up to there. It does have long-distance strategic bombers and long-distance military transport and military bombers that can fly thousands of kilometers. But These are not, they're not stealth. They don't have the P2 Spirit or anything like it. They don't have stealth bombers. So if they were to start sending bombers in that direction, they'd be very obvious in the radar and very easy to shoot down. They're extremely vulnerable to modern air defences, the Russian bombers and military transport. They could it's just like shooting, it's like shooting down clay pigeons or something, but very, very easy. So if it ever came to any kind of conflict, they wouldn't be able to get any military transport near there. Their fighter jets would be far too far away to really consider using fighter jets as far away as Greenland. So there's be nothing Russians could do to support any invasion from the air. Their military vessels, remember that Ukraine has sunk a third of the Black Sea Fleet with much less capable military capabilities than NATO has, far less military capabilities, and that is very close compared to the distance to Greenland. So there's no way that the Russians have no chance of landing warships on the shores of Ukraine anymore, because Ukraine can sink them before they could get to the shores. So there's no way, NATO is far more capable than Ukraine, and there's no way that Russia could send warships to Greenland and do an invasion that way. The only thing that Russia and China have they could use to try and to invade Greenland, which would be able to get there, are their nuclear submarines, which means nuclear-powered submarines. And they could send maybe a few hundred soldiers on nuclear-powered submarines, and they need a very deep dock to nuclear submarine can't kind of beach itself on a sandy beach or something. They need a very deep water dock. There are only a few places in the world where nuclear submarines can dock. So we need to find a dock like that somewhere near Greenland. On Greenland, and they'd have to get permission from Greenland to dock. And then having done that, then all the soldiers go out marching onto Greenland, or they try and dock without permission, and then they go marching onto the shores of Greenland, and that's never going to work as a way of invading Greenland. So it just can't be done. So there isn't actually a security risk there. And you might wonder about the Northwest Passage. So it's a much better idea. So that is actually Greenland there. It's much smaller than it looks on this map. It seems very distorted, it looks much wider. But actually, if you compare that with that, it's very similar width to these islands in width. It's not nearly as big as it looks. You can see there in this map it's a better projection. So that's Greenland. And this is the Northwest Passage. So there are ships that sail quite close to Greenland along the Northwest Passage when they're going from either from Russia or from Atlantic. They actually sail. They could sail from Russia through the north, and they could sail from China to Russia along that if they got permission. And they would sail from Russia to China. But as you can see, this is all Canada. And so the question is does China and Russia have what they call permission for innocent passage? An innocent passage means that if, so long as you're not attacking the countries you're sailing through, and you're not in conflict with them, then a military vessel in international waters is permitted to have innocent passage. It doesn't need to get permission. I think that's right. Have I used that word correctly? I'm not sure. Anyway, whatever it is, the Russians. I'm just hesitating a moment if I got the jargon word right. Anyway, it's the passage whether the Russia and China have the permission to go through from the Atlantic and the Arctic to the Pacific without the permission of China, of Canada. So China and Russia both say that they can do it without permission. But Canada says, no, you can't do it, and you need our permission to do it. Russia and China never tested this. It's very much under the military control of Canada, and Canada would not permit it. Would not permit a military vessel to go through there, without asking permission. And Russia and China have never asked Canada permission to go through there. So that's the situation. So although the Northwest Passage passes quite close to Greenland, just to the south of it, the Russian and Chinese military vessels never use it. So that means all we have is we have Svalbard, and we have the Russian presence in the Barents Sea. Then we have Chinese presence near over here. They come quite close to the passage to Alaska. All the region in between, you never see a Russian or Chinese warship because they don't have the permission to go through there. So Greenland is not really, it's not an objective for, it's firmly part of NATO. Whether it belongs to the United States or belongs to Denmark makes no difference to that. And there's no security situation there, not in the modern world. There was during the Cold War, there isn't anymore, because the military defense systems can shoot down anything that Russia and China could send in the direction of Greenland far too easily. So in the modern world, Greenland is very safe, and there's nothing that Russia or China can do to invade it. So that's a complete nothing burger there. So I think I'll stop there because I've got 26 minutes, and I'll just talk the rest of it. I'll talk about impeachment, why he can't be impeached, and all the different ways that Trump can't get into Greenland, and so why it's utterly impossible, and it's never going to happen. And then I'll talk a little bit about journalists, possibly in another video.